And we're live. Good morning, good evening, and good night. This is another episode of Living World of Darkness, specifically the Vampire Venue, New York by Night. Tonight's scene is actually with a new player. We've got Talima playing Kira Anasenkova, and I should be able to pronounce that, but I'm a horrible person. She's currently immortal, actually. And tonight we are going to have a scene between Kira and Vasily. The scene in question is a bit of a somber and somewhat odd affair. We've got a late night funeral with very few attendees and a rather bored looking pastor, Russian Orthodox Church, if we're not mistaken. In any case, the affair is very quiet. It's a closed casket funeral. The man's body is not fit to be seen by the public. Yeah, that's what happens when a powerful mutant vampire dog creature attacks you. Anyways, there are very few attendees, but among them would be Vasily, possibly a few of his new friends within the Russian mafia, which would likely include Kira and her father, his erstwhile ally within their family. Vasily, after the services are over, dressed more formally than in his picture, would probably be, just kind of standing there after the services are over. They've probably already removed the casket, and he's simply just, thinking quietly to himself. The only people in the room he actually knows worth anything are, well, frankly, Kira's father, and that's about it. Everyone else is a new face to him. So he just stands there. And that would bring us up to Kira. What is Kira doing? What is she dressed in? How is she acting?
Well, first comment is to remind people, or at least let them know, that I've got a horrible cold tonight, so this is not my normal voice.
Yes, I forgot. My bad. And
it's all right. I'm not an Nosferatu in disguise, I promise.
Or she might be, you don't know. But no, trust me, I double-checked to make sure her voice wasn't, killing her or anything. It's like, we can do it another night. But anyways, so with that in mind,
I feel good. My voice sounds horrible. It'll change. It's all right. So it being a funeral, Kira would be dressed in black, or at least somber colors. Probably a darker shade of what she's got here, since frankly that's a decent enough outfit. And depending on how close she was to the person who has just been being buried, or is to be buried, probably thanking people for coming.
She might have met him once or twice, but he wasn't local and he wasn't part of the family per se. He was known to be Vasily's bodyguard. But she'd probably met him at one or two recent events. All she'd know about his death is he died on some brief overseas excursion. There might have been a rumor about, they went somewhere where there was currently some fighting going on. The only European fighting that you might have heard of would be Madrid. There's a lot of turmoil in Spain at the moment, basically a civil war. But in any case, they went, bodyguard did his job, and his master came back. But he's just, once most of the patrons have filed out, it's most likely going to be just the pastor who's just waiting to clean things up, Kira and her father. Most likely to make things simple and not have to make anyone NPC anything out. Because God knows I don't want to have to do it right now. Vasily will probably exchange a few words with Kira's father, and he'll he'll move off to go talk to the pastor, probably arranging payment for services, yada yada yada, or making some final arrangements, perhaps. Vasily kind of looks over at Kira. Vasily is not exceptionally handsome or anything. He's decidedly ordinary looking. Not ugly, just ordinary. Whereas Kira is relatively attractive. But he has a lot of appeal in other ways. His voice is very pleasant to listen to, and he's got real force of charisma. And he's downright manipulative when he wants to be, but hey. In any case, he kind of looks over and addresses her in Russian. Thank you for attending. Hopefully, we'll meet under less painful circumstances.
I hope so. My condolences on your loss.
Yes, thank you. Alexander was a fine bodyguard. Kept me out of many scrapes over the years. It'll be difficult replacing him. Kind of hesitates for a moment as if he's thinking how to continue. Now, we should clarify. Kira has the short flaw, roughly. That puts her at 4.5 feet less, something around that, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So, decidedly petite. I mean, that's like child size, practically. Convenient carrying size.
As long as you don't try to pick her up as a six-pack.
Oh, God, no. Anyways, he kind of looks for a second. He's like, he knows who you are. He's been introduced to you before, but now that he does the books, he knows a lot more about the organization, and he knows a bit more about what she does in the organization. It's amazing what kind of records you can find when you go through the math. You find expenditure reports, not that you guys file too many of those, but, money acquired for basically torture implements.
It's hard to hide anything from the accountants.
Exactly. And now he's kind of looking like he was never told how old you were, but he assumed, based on your height and build, that you were just a rather older-looking teenager. And now he's just like, no, very unlikely in this case. And moreover, a bit odd for someone, to have the same skill set you do. So he's going to kind of hesitate for a moment. It's unlikely he would have found out that she's deaf, however, unless her father just outright told him, because it seems pretty easy for her to get away with that not being obvious with her lip reading skill. Anyways, kind of hesitates for a moment. He's thinking like, well, at some point I'll need to find a replacement for him, but kind of looks at you thoughtfully. Your skills would actually come in handy, I think, at some point or another. Not that I find myself frequently encountering people that need persuaded to tell me anything, and I usually use other methods, but I might want to requisition your skills at some point from your father, if he can spare you.
If he can spare me, I'm quite willing, of course.
He hesitates for a moment, and then he nods to himself as if he's coming to a decision. I'll talk to your father about it. Perhaps not tonight. Obviously, there's a great many things to do tonight, but tomorrow evening, perhaps we could arrange to. He's like not sure the proper word for it. We could arrange to have a business dinner about it.
Of course.
He nods to himself, like that's basically enough thinking on his part for the night. Definitely distracted. And gives you his card, which just you already knew this guy's name and shit anyways, but at least now you have his phone number, an easier way to get a hold of him without having to go ask someone else for it. It's also got his address. It's a rather nice place somewhere in, downtown Manhattan, which I'm not even sure where this location is, so don't worry about it. But the penthouse is in downtown Manhattan, relatively upscale building. He's like, all right, I will expect you sometime tomorrow night then. I hope to see you then. And he heads off to deal with more of the same funeral arrangements that seem to be foremost on his mind at the moment. Not long after, assuming they make their farewells and so on, not long after, her father will probably return, and essentially what I was thinking was the scene would go on as normal at that point, except that we could probably skip ahead to the following night, unless there's something you want to handle between her and her father.
No, just probably let him know about the business dinner.
Probably a good idea. Without going to the full extent of NPCing the fellow, though he is my ally, I could do it to an extent. Safe to say he'd look a little bit like, not concerned, just more curious rather than anything else. But if he's asking for your skill set, then, hey, maybe he thinks he's going to need to use your skills at some point. It wouldn't be that unusual. Maybe the accountant's finding something wrong with the books and needs to have someone questioned.
Well, it's possible.
Though likely, if that were the case.
After all, it's not like he'd be asking me to be his bodyguard.
No, of course not. Why would he do that? I mean, you're not exactly the most physically imposing figure.
Right.
Alexander was a wall of Russian muscle.
Right. And bodyguards are supposed to do at least part of their job by looming appropriately.
Exactly.
It's a little hard to loom when you're just over 4 foot tall.
Exactly. But you never know. You never know. Anyway, so with that, we're not ending the scene. We're just going to fast forward a bit. Usually, we don't fast forward scenes like this, but in this case, since it's basically the two of us playing, and it's going to be, well, your character got approved a day or so ago, plus we're in downtime at the moment. So I'd say we can safely just say that, we can skip ahead for a night or so. And if we're lucky enough to get a scene with someone else in the next day or so, we'll worry about that when we get to it.
Right.
In any case, so following evening, if you arrive at presumably some prearranged time, you get to his penthouse, he'd probably have to buzz you into the building because it's an upscale building. It's got locks on the doors. The penthouse...
Expect any less.
Of course. He's a Ventru, for crying out loud. But the penthouse is rather nicely appointed. He'd be at the door to greet you. Doesn't seem to have any servants or anything, which it's a penthouse again, not a mansion, so it's not too surprising. But it's a relatively large penthouse, so a lot of space for one person. Anyways, he would be at the door to greet her, dressed mostly the same as before, but not quite the full, ensemble for it's formal attire, but not funeral attire.
Right.
He seems in a more relaxed and laid-back mood. But there is one thing that would happen, and you may need to pull out your character sheet for this one. There is, if I am not mistaken, you have your willpower score. I'm going to be making a roll, because he's going to be using his presence ability on you. Presence 3 specifically, which it's the entrancement ability, and I can copy paste it for you if you like. But essentially, it's let's see, the player rolls appearance and empathy. I'll just copy paste it so you can read it. There you go. It is in the chat. Player rolls appearance, empathy, difficulty of your target's permanent willpower. So whatever your permanent willpower is, that's the difficulty of my roll. Number of successes determine how long you are entranced. On the entrancement, essentially, according to this, here's the effect. It's basically emotion control, but it's more of a long-term, you are my servant type thing, but doesn't work the same as dominate, obviously. I posted the description of what it actually does. What is her permanent willpower?
7.
All right.
The question is, do I have to hear it?
No. Its presence is force of will. Though that is interesting. Since you are deaf, enchanting voice has no effect on you, so I don't get any bonus from that. But
he wouldn't know that either.
Exactly. He doesn't even know she's deaf. But fortunately, presence does not operate. Dominate operates via eye contact. Presence is more of a, just like he can do it just so long as he's in your presence. Now, in this case, that's going to give him, let's see, if I roll appearance and subterfuge, I believe it says, then, because I'm not an ST and I forget these things a lot. Appearance and empathy. Okay. Well, his appearance is 2, and his empathy is 2, so I don't have a huge pool for this. The difficulty is 7, so he's going to burn a willpower because he wants this to be effective, so I gain 1 automatic success. 2 successes, which means this will only last for 1 day. So by tomorrow night, it will have faded. But until then, you feel the same effects as this. And he does that literally as he opens the door to greet you. So that will be an interesting effect. But he seems relatively normal, despite what your character is now feeling. He's like, good evening, Miss Ennis.
He's trying to do what with her? What's the effect to do?
Well, I posted it in the chat. Essentially, it's this power bends others' emotions, making them the vampire's willing servants.
Okay, I see it.
Yes. The first part I posted was the mechanics. Basically, it's like a way better version of Dominate because it lets you have free will. Though a lot of vampires consider that to make it less reliable.
All
right, so he does that as he opens the door. There's no visual cues or anything attached to it. It's traceless. He basically opens the door. He says, "Good evening, Miss Anasankova. Please come in. Or may I call you Kira?"
Of course.
All right. He lets her in, closes the door behind her, locks it, of course. He leads her into the living room, essentially, before they, because he's not going to go straight to dinner or anything, obviously. It's well appointed. He sits down, motions to a seat across from him.
She takes a seat.
There's some wine that's already been poured, or at least it looks like wine. They're both a ruddy red color, but if she sniffs it, it's wine. At least the glass that's in front of her is. His looks identical, though, so. But he's got his in his hand right now, so. It's like, just kind of motions like, please, help yourself, by all means. Takes a sip of his own. It's not actually wine. His is actually, blood, but hers is actually wine. With a little bit of his vitae mixed in. Which would actually make it taste much better. Downright awesome. This is some good wine. Where could I get more of this? And it also set her up with stage 1 blood bond, which we can go over later, but it won't have much effect for this. In any case, once he gestures for her to, sit, enjoy yourself, etc., it's like, well, here's the thing. As I understand it, there may be occasions in the future where I find myself needing to pressure some information out of certain individuals. This is actually not related to your father's business. This is actually related to my business, which is of a slightly larger and more dangerous scale.
That's fine.
Just kind of looks at her like he's a little bit surprised at how easily she accepts that, because he's basically saying, yeah, this is worse than being involved in mafia business. I mean, granted, she's used to mafia business, but
Business is still business, and you are an ally.
True. Kind of thinks for a moment. Well, during the course of any jobs you may perform for me, you may find yourself learning things which should not be shared with anyone else. Discretion is of the utmost importance. There are things that I would not even tell your father unless they directly concerned him, because to know those things would make him a target. The same is true of anyone who learns the information. Kind of waits. Yep, am I still on? Good.
Yes.
He kind of waits for a reaction on that one, just like making sure you realize it. He's basically saying, don't, if you find out anything through this kind of job, don't pass it on unless it directly involves him.
She'll make note of it, although her basic intention is, yeah, that's up to my discretion.
Well, yeah. He's just warning her of what could happen. He's not threatening her or her father, right. Obviously. He's just saying, you got to be cautious here. He's like, all right. Well.
Deniability is always a good thing.
Exactly.
But sometimes it's good to know what you should be denying.
Exactly. He says, well, with that in mind, I'm sure we can work out a reasonable salary for any specific jobs that need done. I'm sure you'd be compensated accordingly. What are your other skills? I know of the one, obviously, which you are known for and often employed for, but do you have any other skills?
Oh, you mean my questioning ability?
Yes, that one I'm aware of. Any others?
I've also been helping train some of the men.
Not to be too direct, but are you able to, in the proper situation, if you were forced to defend yourself, say from a prisoner who got rowdy or broke free of their restraints, are you utterly helpless, or would you have a way of defending yourself?
Oh, I can manage to defend myself some. Grant, I'm not the strongest.
You have preferred means of doing so? Guns are awfully loud in many cases, but they can be useful. Knives are also a favorite. He's obviously not suggesting that you take on people with your bare hands.
Right. Oh, I like knives.
Something we have in common then.
And most guns can have silencers attached.
True. And I honestly don't know, out of character, I don't know if we follow the cinematic rules for silencers or not, because in real life, their suppressors just muffle the muzzle flash. They don't mute the sound very well.
Oh.
But for this game, they probably do. Anyways.
Well, I'd imagine that depends on just how far into the person you stick the gun.
You got a point. Anyways. Okay, so with that in mind, he thinks to himself, he's like, all right, that's very useful. Anything else? So you can defend yourself, you have your questioning ability, and your training abilities. Anything else that I've missed?
Not particularly.
Fair enough. Well, in that case, He kind of thinks for a moment. I was going to have dinner, but if it's all the same to you, there might be something else that I can. He's like hesitating as if he's thinking about explaining something to you, like he's not sure the risks. Because I should point out of character, he does not know how well his presence ability has affected her. He thinks it's affected her. He's pretty certain it has, but he doesn't know if it's going to last a couple minutes, the rest of the night, a year. It's kind of random. He's like, okay, well, let me inform you of something then. This will be what I can inform you until our next meeting, which hopefully will be tomorrow night, because I may actually have a proper test of your skills by then. But in short, there are organizations in the city which operate outside the purview of organized crime. They are a collection of extremely influential individuals, most of them. Some of them do not bother to accrue that sort of talent. Others do, like myself. They seem to come from all walks of life, but they all share a few traits in common. It's a bit harder to explain all at once, but suffice to say these individuals are extremely resourceful and, in many cases, dangerous. And there are some who even have influence with other crime families. I work with yours, of course, but there are others who work with, say, I believe I know one who's involved with the Irish mob, another involved with the Italians, and one who's even involved with another Russian family in town, though one of very little significance, I'm told. So there are others, and their skills are not the same as mine. Some of them are far more dangerous and involved. If you ever find one of them as a prisoner of ours, it will be very enlightening.
I'm sure it will.
It's obvious he's not sure what else to say at that point as far as explaining anything, like there's something holding him back at this point. In any case, kind of watches her for a moment. I'm going to make a perception empathy roll, actually, just because he has that as a possible thing. It's basically he's trying to gauge her current mood, basically trying to see if his ability actually worked, because he's not sure at this point because she's very reserved.
Well, she is, being a dom.
He got 3 successes, so I would say without an ST here to, do this whole thing, and it's their weekend off anyways, odds are with 3 successes he'd get at least a general idea of, like, maybe a glimpse behind her facade in this case.
All right. Basically, she's feeling confident that she can handle most things that come her way. And she's definitely a bit taken by him. After all, he's coping so well with the loss of his bodyguard.
Fair enough. But she's definitely very reserved about the whole thing. So he's mostly just going to get confidence, maybe a tiny hint of attraction. But that's about all he's going to. That's all he's going to be able to tell. Okay. Probably. So with that, he kind of nods to himself, like, "All right." And it is noteworthy. He is definitely taking the loss of his ghoul fairly well, even though it apparently happened like a week or so ago.
Even so, you practically live with your bodyguard.
Oh yeah, this guy, and supposedly this guy had been with him for years. He wasn't a recent hire or anything. I mean, you guys have no idea how long he was with him, but for a long while. As long as your father has known him, and you get the impression your father has known him for probably 10 to 15 years, which is part of the reason why your father suspects things, because neither him or his bodyguard aged.
Hey. It would be like losing a member of your family.
Yep. So at that point.
So yes, he's taking it quite well. So there's definitely admiration there. And sympathy.
Perk of having humanity 6. Anyways,
Well, whether she's right or wrong, it's
I know. That's how she feels. So, with that in mind, he'd probably engage in a little chit chat, but not too much because this was a business meeting after all. I assume she does drink out of the wine glass.
Of course.
All right. Do you remember offhand how blood bond works, or do you want me to go over the brief version of it?
As I recall, the first one gets you more or less attracted to them. The second one, you don't really want to ask against them. And the third one, yeah, you're stuck.
More or less. The first one doesn't necessarily imply a attraction, if I remember correctly. It's more they come up in your thoughts a lot more. There's no actual compulsion to obey them. They are just something you think about frequently. The Tremere all have level 1 blood bond to the Council of Seven, which is part of why their clan is so coherent and single-minded. It's always first on their minds. They may not be like, we have a compulsion here, but they always remember that the Council is watching. Very similar. So with that in mind, the first blood bond is only going to do that. She will think of him, most likely, but nothing beyond that. And as I said, the presence itself will wear off by the following evening. So the next time they meet, she'll be back to her normal emotional self. So whether that means she loses her infatuation with him, or just goes, it was a momentary attraction, regardless, it's no longer affecting her. But the blood bond is.
Right.
So it kind of makes up for it a little bit. So,
right.
Again, fast forwarding a bit, mostly because there's a desire here to get this character ready to actually be in play as a ghoul, because I can't introduce this character until she's a ghoul. I also can't tell her anything unless I want to be in breach of the first. Anyways, the next night, 3 nights in a row at this point, but only blood bonded on the second. The next night, again, he'd have you meet him at his penthouse. And again, she's buzzed up. He's dressed a little more casually this time. Not closer to what he wears in the picture. And he'd probably have told her ahead of time, this is more of a informal meeting, First meeting went well, no need to do anything special for this one. So she can arrive in whatever. He'd be there at the door.
It should tend to always be in something classy.
Oh yeah, but not like
whether it's formal or not. It doesn't have to be formal, but it's not slutty or scuzzy or anything.
She dresses to impress, though. I get it. Yeah.
You've got to when you're a woman, especially if you're a short woman.
All right. So with that in mind, he's there to greet her again, and again, this time he takes her into a little room that's got a selection of books. They're all contemporary. There's no occult masterpieces lying in wait, no Book of Nod copies or anything. Nothing like that. He takes her in there and has her sit down. Again, there's some more wine poured. And he's like, help yourself again. It's a rather nice vintage. Really nice. He also kind of watches her again, to see if she's acting any differently than the night before. But with her being so reserved, it's kind of hard to tell.
Right.
He doesn't know if that attraction's still there or not. So he kind of looks at her, he's like, are you feeling all right, Kira? Like, he's obviously about to call her full name and shortened it at the last moment.
Yes, I'm feeling fine.
Kind of nods to himself. All right. Well, tonight we will go over some of the information I wanted to impart to you. He motions for her to sit down, helps himself to the wine. He motions, help yourself as usual, waiting for her to actually get comfortable and hopefully to drink out of the glass. He's Not obviously waiting for that, because that would seem fucking suspicious and creepy as hell.
Oh, yeah.
Like, please drink out of the poisoned wine glass I prepared for you. I put so much effort into it.
Yeah. That would not be good.
No. But instead, rather than just simply waiting for that, he starts talking. He's like, all right, so. And as he starts talking, he's going to throw his presence at her again. Again, he's not sure. I mean, I can roll perception empathy also just to see if he gets an idea of her current emotions. And he fails miserably. So he has no idea. She is a closed book to him, totally opaque. He has no idea what's going on in her head right now. She's actually really hard to read, which is a good trait to him. That's good. That means other people won't know how to read her either. But in any case, he's going to throw his presence at her again. And like the night before, he's going to blow a willpower point on it because he's not taking any chances with her bolting and running off to tell someone. If she's under presence and is blood bond, he's safe. If not, it will be worth more than his life is. At the very least, he'd have to kill her and probably her father. That's not something he wants to do. So I'm going to make that roll again. And wouldn't you know it, he still fails. So no change.
For Vasily.
Poor Vasily, and that's with a willpower point. Well, he doesn't know, again, if it's worked or not. He has absolutely no idea. So he's just going to start talking, watching her for any telltale signs or cues, and pray to God he gets a good perception alertness roll later, or perception empathy roll later in this. Otherwise, she could smoke him so bad. Thinking he's hedged his bets, he starts talking. He says, all right, so the individuals I spoke of are not normal. And by that I mean, well, your father may have mentioned at some point that he and I have worked together for many years.
I believe so, yes.
Well, how old would you say I am? He looks to be in his mid-20s, perhaps. No, definitely no older than 30.
You're probably older than you look.
Oh, yes. He just kind of smiles at that. More than you know. I began working with your father around the turn of the millennium, which would have been when she was a mere infant. And to look at him, that would have made him younger than her. That would have made him a teenager. And yet, there's nothing in her father's anecdotes which would have hinted that he was that young at the time. So either he was a very capable teenager, or he really is a lot older than he looks. More so than most people would believe.
Precocious.
Did she say that?
Mm-hmm.
He smiles and says, not quite. Alexander was also with me. Now, a teenager at that age being able to be involved in organized crime is one thing, but having a bodyguard?
That's old money.
And he just kind of smiles and he's like, not quite. Alexander looked much the same then as he did now, and so did I, for that matter. The individuals in question do not age quite at the same rate as your average person. Think of it as a sort of unnatural longevity. Alexander, I acquired around, it would have been in the early 70s, actually. He's actually older than your father.
I don't think you found the fountain of youth.
Oh, not quite a fountain, no. It's not quite that. It's not quite that. If it were that effective, someone would have made a fortune off of it already. And likely it'd be sitting in some vault someplace, probably underneath the Vatican. But, no, as it happens. But I can give you a tacit example of this if you, as I would understand, would not believe me in the slightest. Let me see. He kind of looks around for a moment. He's still watching her for reaction, but I'm assuming right now it's just impassively watching, listening. Fair guess?
Pretty much.
Okay.
A bit dubiously.
Okay. He finds a letter opener in the drawer next to him. He's like not hiding it or anything. He's not, and he's far enough away. He's not making any threatening motions with it. Besides, it's a fucking letter opener. Though he did say he likes knives. He pulls a letter opener and he's like, tests the edge. Like, okay. Holds up his palms so that she can see it. I'm going to turn on my webcam for just a moment so you can see the gesture. Holds up his palm like this from across the room. Takes the letter opener. Cuts a line right across his hand. You can see blood welling. You know, obviously it hurt a little bit, but he just bears through it. He's like, had worse than this, obviously. You know, blood starts dripping. He waits a second, looks at it, seals right up. There's still a little bit of blood smeared here, but he just like picks up a little napkin. Blood's gone. No mark. All gone. Closes his hand, sets it back down.
Should get up, walk over, hold out a hand for his, and try examining his hand.
By all means, lets her take a look at it. If she has any medicine roll or anything else, don't even need to roll, basically. You're going to see there's nothing wrong with his hand at this point. No, not even scar tissue.
Well, I don't think it's so much that she's got medical, but that she's
well, she knows how knife wounds
she
work.
at least knows how that works. Yeah,
exactly. She has practical experience on how knife wounds affect people, and there's no signs of it. There's no signs that it even happened, honestly, other than the trace amount of blood still left on his hand and the bloody napkin. There's no sign of it.
True, but should check his hand and then should check the letter opener.
He shrugs and goes, "You can use it on yourself or on me, either way."
Masochistic?
Not if I can help it. But, I like to be thorough. You're taking this awfully well.
Well, it is intriguing.
There are other things which I haven't mentioned. This, by the way, as I'm sure you can realize, is the sort of information I mentioned which should not be passed on. To put it bluntly, the individuals of which I spoke have a very firm rule about sharing information. Namely, you don't. If you do, you have to have some means of making sure that person will not say anything. He kind of raises both hands as if to ward off any misunderstandings. In some cases, if someone's about to die. Not this case, obviously. In other cases, if the person is, shall we say, in the person's employ. Alexander, for example, was fully aware of my condition and shared something similar himself, though to a lesser extent.
And what sort of condition would you call this?
There are a few words for it, especially in the homeland. Could actually look one of them up. I wish I spoke more Russian.
Vampire is actually a Russian word, I do believe.
Really? With the W and everything?
Wampyr.
Yeah, the pronunciation is actually vampire. That's hilarious. Okay.
Hey, I believe the word came from Romania, which is fairly close to Russia.
Good point. All right, so he just kind of hesitates for a second and then says that word in, fluent Russian. It's like, that is the closest approximation, though many of the legends are incorrect, as you can no doubt imagine. There is a basis to the myth, though, as is with many myths. And there are stranger things than I that walk the night. Mind you, he hasn't shown you any fangs or anything else, so as far as you know, he's just got some bizarre healing power. But that, coupled with what he just suggested, maybe it's worth listening to him. By the way, you are also free to make perception empathy rolls yourself versus difficulty 6. If you look on the left-hand side of your hangout, there's an array of buttons. There should be anyways. If there's not, we won't worry about this. But do you see them? Move your mouse towards the left.
Screen share and showcase.
Chat, screen share, and showcase. Is there a thing below saying more?
There's a question mark clear down at the bottom.
No. Don't worry about it then. You probably have to add it later. There's a app you can usually use called Dice Stream. I can do it for you, though, if you want. You'll be able to see the results on my end. What is her... If you want to use perception empathy. If you don't want to, go ahead. But I figure she might want to tell if he's lying or not.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your perception empathy combination?
I don't think she has perception.
No, she does. It's one of the core stats.
Oh, there it is. Perception's 2, empathy's 1, psychology is 1.
I'd say for this case, probably empathy, just standard perception empathy. So I'm going to roll 3 dice, difficulty 6. She gets 1 success. Based on that limited glance, he does not appear to be lying.
True, but he could be delusional.
Could be, but you did see him cut himself, though it might have been a parlor trick. You could always stab him yourself. For his part, he's just waiting patiently, like watching you, trying to see your reactions. Wishing you weren't so hard to read. He's sweating bullets right now, even if he doesn't look it. Because, he doesn't think he actually does not think he could take you. He's like, if my powers don't work on her, I am so screwed. But anyways, her reaction.
Thoughtful, thinking it over. Let's say I believe you. What do you want out of me?
Well, your skill set, as I said, is very useful. And the individuals which are like me tend to be a bit more... Obviously, as you can tell, they can withstand a lot of things that your average person would not, which means torturing them can be a challenge. Sometimes a good one. There are also some who are relatively impervious to harm. There are some who you could, frankly, stab as much as you wanted, and you'd probably not even impede them. Kind of like hesitates for a moment. We have our own society, and there are many clans and bloodlines, various names and so forth. I'll be glad to teach you as much as I can. It's only appropriate, especially if I hope to eventually have you become... He's like hesitating to look for the right word. Well, the word is ghoul, but there are no undead connotations. You still remain quite alive, though you stop aging, as Alexander stopped aging. You also gain some measure of physical strength beyond your normal capacity. Alexander was stronger than he looked. which she might have actually heard a rumor about once or twice.
Tempting.
Okay, he's gonna roll perception empathy again to try and see, like, oh, come on, she's got to be tempted. She's got to be tempted,
You
right?
just said it was tempting.
I know, but he's thinking there's got to be, like, this is too tough. This is too tough. She should have already fallen for this. 2 successes. Thank God. He's got to get something out of that. No sign. I'm guessing there's no sign of the attraction from the previous night.
Oh, she does figure that. I figured that she considered the attraction as he's bearing up well under his loss. So yeah, it's a measure of respect. She see no reason to lose it, even though the presence is worn off.
Okay, so her reflection on how she felt about it has caused her to essentially feel something similar, though not as strong.
Right.
Okay.
And yes, she is tempted by the stronger than you look. And
not having to deal with old age.
or at least the signs of old age. And she's at least willing to give him the benefit of the doubt at the moment. She's not convinced.
He's like, well...
But she's at least willing to play along.
Let me add a little bit to the offer. You see, though I would not offer it at present, for it is not something that my clan specifically offers easily, in the long term, there is the possibility you could actually become like me. Which, there are some differences between myself and a ghoul. A ghoul does not age. I do not age. A ghoul requires the, shall we say, the presence of a vampire over some amount of time. It's a rather complicated situation, but essentially you won't be able to remain a ghoul forever without the aid of a vampire. Had Alexander left my services for any reason, he would have begun aging once more. Not at any accelerated rate, as far as I know, but he would have started his clock again, and he would also have lost his strength. He liked both of those things. And also, in case I forgot to mention, you gain a slight measure of my regenerative abilities, but slight and more of a one-shot use, and there are repercussions to using it. But it is possible. You might be nearly fatally wounded and could staunch the bleeding, essentially. You would not be, we're not talking about Wolverine or anything.
I would hope not. If you were, I'd be calling Bellevue.
In any case, there are other benefits. I have, as your father may or may not have hinted, I have contacts within the justice system and the local police departments within Manhattan. I require someone to help me manage some of my appointments and keep some of my contacts clear. Arrange meeting times and take messages, that sort of thing. I would not deign to call you a simple secretary, but as you can understand, I need someone that I can wholly rely on to take certain messages of that nature. Because sometimes they will be extremely sensitive, let alone when I may receive contact from another of my own kind. And there are several of my kind within the city at this moment, not all of them friendly. On that note, I would recommend for your own health, do not enter the Bronx and do not enter Staten Island, and whatever you do, do not enter Central Park. There are other things out there. They literally might smell me off of you. and that would not leave them well disposed to allow you to leave their territory.
Fair enough.
But you should be safe within Queens. I don't know about, but it should be safe. Brooklyn is definitely safe, and Manhattan is assuredly safe, which leaves you the majority of the city. In any case, assuming you take the offer, there would obviously be hefty pay involved. It would be more of a on retainer employment, though. I assume by now she's had a second drink of the wine.
Yes.
Okay, so second effect, blood bond, which makes her less likely to oppose him. Definitely an attraction, but, or in this case, enhancing her existing attraction, I would say. But mostly, she's just not going to want to attack him or anything. She's not going to work. She's not going to want to work directly against his interests. But if she had reason to, she could.
Right.
It's only third stage where she gets well and truly fucked. Anyways, essentially, the he kind of like looks at her again. With those things in mind, you would not want to enter those areas. I could give you a further education in all the clans, some basic information about them, how to comport yourself in our society, because you would definitely have to be introduced to other people within my society. Otherwise, they would not know who you are, and it will be important that they do. It's not uncommon for our kind to take on the occasional mortal to follow us around as a ghoul. And as I said, ghouls sometimes become vampires in turn. Some will see you as an amusement. Some will see you as a threat. Simply by your presence, you may be seen as an extension of my own senses. And there are others who would see you as property. You can imagine the sort of temperament that living for centuries can instill in people. You start to see anything that's not of your same caliber as lesser.
Women have fought against that for ages.
Well, for what it's worth, Alexander faced the exact same stigma. The fact that he was male and built mostly of muscle did not help him in the slightest in this regard. So it's not gender bias. And nor is the, shall we say, the Vampiric Club a boys' club. There are a fair number of female vampires as well. In fact, I know 3 in my personal acquaintance. Which I will likely introduce you to at some point. In any case, if you can give me your word that you will not breathe a word of this to your father, because, as I said, this knowledge would be very bad for him. It's best if he doesn't know anything. I can assure you I have no untoward motives regarding your family. My goal is, in fact, to help your family gain as much prominence as possible. Even if you consider it to be for my own selfish ends, your interests are tied up with my interests, and mine with yours. I want you to succeed, therefore I will do everything I can to make you succeed.
And what's your end in it?
Pardon?
And what's your end?
You mean, what am I trying to get out of her family, other than a steady paycheck? If your family gains influence and manages to hedge out some of the other families in Manhattan, that gives me a level of control, even if my influence in the family is not total. And at some point it could well be, though I definitely don't plan on taking on the public leadership role. As you're aware, often the consigliere is, as the Italians would call it, the consigliere is often the power behind the throne in many ways. That is a position I would not mind having myself at some point.
Fair enough.
But that is a long-term goal. At the moment, my influence will not extend that far. Anyways, if you will give me your word, then we can explain a few things tonight, perhaps. Adjourn, perhaps. There's a lot of information to take in, let's put it that way. I wouldn't want to overload you.
You have my word on it, as long as you don't act against the family.
Wouldn't dream of it. Ooh, sorry. Yawned there out of character. Character's definitely not yawning.
Yeah, he's got no reason to.
Yeah. Like, oh, so bored. No. Met one short spy master, you've met them all. No, in any case, with that would be the he's not going to attempt presence again because he's basically given up on reading her for the moment. He's just hoping that the 2-stage blood bond keeps her in check. And if she is presenced, damn, she's good at hiding her emotions. But either way, she's 2 steps bonded, so he's actually not in that much danger. At that point, though, probably this actually would be a decent place to end the scene. We can assume that he gives her a little bit of extra training regarding what the clans are, what their powers are. He has Camarilla lore too, or I should say vampire lore too. I can go over what he teaches her in a blue book post on my forum, and maybe I'll post the same thing to you, obviously. You can list it on your own forum if you want.
I have no idea what that is, so.
I'll show you. No big deal.
Okay.
But in any case, that is probably a good place to end the scene. Thank you, players for players. Thank you, watchers for watching. The scene will be posted after downtime, along with all the other scenes that will be posted after downtime. Thank you and good night.